Welcome to Getcha Rocks Off with Mick Wall, the world's leading rock and metal writer. Each fortnight, Mick will unpack rock and roll stories. Stories that you probably won't find in print. So pour yourself a Jack and Coke and get ready to get your rocks off.
Okay, welcome to a very special, I was going to say New Year's Eve.
It is New Year's Eve.
It's New Year's Eve.
Well, obviously it's not New Year's Eve now.
No.
It will be New Year's Eve.
And it probably isn't New Year's Eve by the time you get to listen to this, because that's the thing about podcasts.
Who knows when you'll listen to it?
In fact, probably no one will listen to it on New Year's Eve.
No, I will.
And by the time in March 21, when they get round to clicking this, they'll go,
Oh, it was New Year's Eve.
Look what
a happy time with everyone at home in their COVID house.
I could have stayed at home in my one-man bubble, listening to Getcha Rocks Off, featuring the one and only Mick Wall and the other bloke.
The other bloke, John Hodden, that other guy who's on it.
I remember going into the Marquee with Jimmy Page in about 1989 or something. Yeah. And
which one? The one in Warder? No, Gone from Warder Street.
No, not the original one.
Charing
Cross
Road.
Yeah, the one that wasn't so good.
It was nowhere near as good.
Nowhere near as good. You could walk up the stairs to the balcony.
Yeah. It was nicer, but it just wasn't as good.
So, it's packed. It's a secret gig by Alice Cooper. Right? It's so secret. It's fucking packed.
Yeah.
Everybody in the business is there.
But that's the point of a secret gig.
Making sure as many people know as possible that it's happening. That's a proper secret gig.
Yeah.
So I didn't know. I hadn't been out many times with Jimmy. I didn't know he carried zero security or anything.
Yeah.
It wasn't until we were halfway through this intense crowd that I realised I was the security. But as people see him coming,
good choice.
They're literally parting. They're literally parting, and you can hear them going, "It's Jimmy Page. It's Jimmy Page. It's Jimmy." And they went, Jimmy Page and a bloke.
Yeah. The bloke.
A bloke.
Yeah. Did
you see Jimmy Page with a bloke? Yeah. That was fame, kids, in the pre-social media age. Anyway, so it's not New Year's Eve, but it is.
It kind of is.
It kind of is. And as everybody knows, he said, putting his reading glasses on and going to the internet, as everybody knows, here on New Year's Eve, Kiss, the mighty Kiss, that's block caps, Kiss, okay, they are doing...
As we speak, are in Dubai.
And they are, as we speak, probably this is now ancient history, but in real time, semi-real time, Kiss, New Year's Eve 2020 into 21, a special live stream performance in Dubai, which will feature, and I love this detail, which will feature over $1 million worth of pyro.
Of course it will, yeah.
And $750,000 in COVID protection.
Yeah.
I like it.
What you can do is you can divide those figures by 10 to get the real figures. Because Doc McGhee, the manager of Kiss, who, as you well know, sat in his office going, how many, this... Can you imagine the bill for the pyro coming across Doc's desk? $1 million. No.
Well, no.
Can you imagine Gene Simmons going, I've got to spend $1 million for something that's just on TV? Well, it's never going to happen.
Is it though? I'm just looking at it.
I mean, how much does pyro cost? I mean, $1 million of pyro.
Yeah.
I find that staggering.
Kiss don't get out of bed for any pyro that's less than $1 million. Let me tell you that. Hang on.
Yeah.
So there's a quote here from Gene Simmons.
What are they going to do? They're going to blow that massive hotel up. That would be worth watching.
Well, I'm trying to read this article to find out. Now, some would arguably say I should have read it before we began recording, but that ain't how we roll on Getcha Rocks Off. So I've got a great quote from Gene Simmons here. We play big. There's not a lot of subtlety in what we do. It's like the 4th of July. You don't want chaos. You can have the biggest, but it won't be the baddest just because of some random explosions everywhere and 300-foot fireballs going off. You can't tap your foot to that or sing along. You want to have something that has coordination. So everything that we're naturally doing on stage is going to be amplified. 10 to 100-fold bigger, oh my God. And that's a quote. That's a quote,
but that actually doesn't mean anything, does it? That was just a load of words arranged roughly one after the other that have very little meaning in the real world.
No.
Far from me to be cynical about anything that Gene Simmons says.
I love this quote. This is a great quote. This is actually from Doc. It's in Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah.
This is a fantastic...
This will be a proper quote.
This is a proper quote.
It means something.
Yeah, here we go. Quote. We don't really have a word for no. We know what people want. They want the biggest thing out there. Our motto is, if you're going to run with the big dogs, you can't piss like a puppy. Isn't that great?
See, that's a quote. That's a proper quote. Now I get what the gig's going to be about. Never mind Gene's thing about it all has to be in the right order or something. What has to be in the right order? What's he talking about?
I don't know.
The songs have to be in the right order so that Paul Stanley can remember the lyrics.
Ah, here we go. Well, apparently there's 400 people, but I think they might be actually working on the show.
They're setting off the $1 million of pyro.
Yeah. Oh, here's another great quote from Doc. The last thing we want to be... Oh, sorry, let me start that again. This is a brilliant quote from Doc. The last thing we want to be known as is the band that infected the fucking world. That's the last thing they want to be known for.
Yeah.
So I can't. Maybe there isn't a crowd. Anyway, it's going to be live streamed,
Is it going to be? Is it by any chance pay-per-view?
I don't know. I can't go into that sort of detail here, John. I'm going to let the people Google.
Yeah,
Because
it's specially for the fans.
Yes, very
fans
much so.
only.
Well, that's how it always should be.
Yeah.
Other bands could learn. Why aren't the Stones doing a New Year's Eve concert and spending $1 million on 300-foot fireballs?
Yeah, why not? That's a good question.
What is a 300-foot fireball? The last time I saw that was at Lockerbie.
Yeah. No.
Or the Twin Towers.
No. See, that needs to be cut.
A bad taste joke.
A bad taste joke.
That's there's a moratorium on New Year's Eve. You can tell any bad taste joke you like. Yeah. Okay? And that was mine. Okay? So anyway, we've decided to dedicate this particular podcast edition of Getcha Rocks Off to Kiss. Now, in the many minutes John and I spent preparing the show, we did think, well, do we go right back to the beginning and how did it? But do you know what? I don't think you can with Kiss because there is no beginning.
Yeah,
it's like the Big Bang of the universe. There was no Kiss, and then there was Kiss.
Yeah.
So even though you could say that Chaim Witz, who later changed his name to Gene Simmons, and Stanley Eisen, who later changed his name to Paul Stanley, you could take the story from there. But why would you do that? Because no one gives a shit until they become Gene and Paul and Gene.
Yeah.
And even before Kiss, when they called the band Wicked Lester.
Much better name in my view.
Well, it would have been, but I think that the Alice Cooper, Wicked Lester, that's not to say Kiss just ripped Alice Cooper off in terms of the makeup and that sort of thing.
No. They interpreted it in a new way.
I think they took
Just
it
as the
forward.
same as they took the fireball and they turned it into a 300-foot fireball.
Yeah.
It's like, which one would you rather see? I mean, never mind who came up with the fireball.
No.
Which one do you want to see? The original fireball or the 300-foot? I'll see the 300-foot one, please.
You see, that's a good point. I think that's Kiss's musical career in a nutshell. Really, is they have a proud tradition of taking things that other people invented and turning them into something much more interesting.
Yeah.
Bigger, better. You've had the rest.
Now have the best. I think that's totally fair to say as far as Kiss go. It really is. And if you look at, even in recent years, Gene, who is, I would suggest, the driving force of a lot of the kind of business side of Kiss.
Yes.
Because when they, we're not going to talk a lot about the 70s, but in the 70s, they were known for being the first band, I suppose, that became a brand, weren't they? You could
franchise.
buy, the famous Kiss lunchbox and the comic book and all the other stuff,
Pinball
all the other
machine.
the merchandise they came up with, the radios, a little Kiss radio, and all of those sort of things.
And obviously the costumes and the
Yeah. So it's an industry. It's a little mini industry, and as things developed, Gene wasn't the first with it. He wasn't, the Osbournes came along and had a reality show. So Gene had a reality show, and it didn't really matter that it wasn't the first reality show.
But because we'd had the rest.
Yeah.
And now we were going to get the best.
Yeah, and he did that. So the Dirt came out. So Gene produced an autobiography that told you all about his dirt,
Did he? What was it? I must have missed that one.
He
What
was
was it called?
actually he had several, and the most telling one.
He had several.
He did. The most telling one was he wrote this, and I had to review it, and I had to interview him about it. And it was a business book, and I can't remember now what it was called.
Ooh.
But it was Gene Simmons' Guide to Business, and I thought, well, that's going to be actually a lot more interesting than Gene Simmons, rattling on about the groupies or whatever it is that he used to take photos of, which always seemed to be trying just a little bit too hard. I took photos of them all. Did you?
Just to prove
just to prove they were real, that I've seen a real woman in real life. It's just trying a bit too hard. Warren Beatty or Beatty or whatever you call him, he didn't bother taking photos of them. He's just doing the business, and on he went.
What I've always been curious about, though, when it comes to that, is I'd like to have seen some pictures of Gene while he was with the groupies. Because I want to know,
but he was behind the...
Was he in full regalia with tongue dangling?
Yeah, well,
disgustingly.
I don't know. I don't know at what point he used to take the stuff off after the gig, Did he go straight backstage with the groupies with all the stuff on?
Yeah.
Or did he have a shower and stuff? Because you imagine Paul Stanley straight off the stage, out of the catsuit, out of the makeup, doing his hair, into the gear, the other Paul Stanley gear. Off with the wig, on with the street wig, which is just slightly less wiggy, and then he's out there with being Paul Stanley, But Gene, I don't know at what point he stopped being the God of Thunder. But the point of this book was it had these. It was interesting. You mentioned his origins there and his original name, which, as anyone will realise, is a very Jewish name. I think it's even Hebrew. And when he arrived, the first couple of chapters of this business book were about his childhood and about how he arrived in America, not speaking any English at all.
Right.
And you can imagine how disorientating and confusing and difficult something like that is. And when you understand that, you kind of start to understand Gene Simmons and the creation of Gene Simmons a whole lot better, because this tremendous insecurity of his childhood then plays out in the rest of his life.
And I heard, I can't remember where, the thing with Kiss is they've been around so long, and they are a kind of living mythology, that there are just millions of stories, and some might be true, some might be nearly true. I think this is true, or this is certainly something Gene has been telling people in recent years, is you're right, he couldn't speak any English when he came to America as a child. And he learned through watching news broadcasts.
Right.
And he says that's where his speaking voice comes from. So, here's Gene Simmons.
Yeah, yeah.
So, tonight on News at 6. You know, you can see that, can't you? He does have that kind of demeanour.
Yeah, he does very much, yeah. And that sort of, the thrust of his money-making book, which was really interesting, actually. I mean, it's not something I'd subscribed to, but was that you have to be prepared to go further than anyone else. That was the thrust of it. So, and that's not in a kind of Trumpian way where you just have to try and be a worse person than anyone else. What you have to do is you have to work harder. You know, if they're out selling from 8 till 8, you're out there from 7 till 9. You know, it's that mentality, that which is really the immigrant mentality and the American mentality of the, you know, you can succeed, but you've got to be prepared to go further than the guy next to you. You know, sell it cheaper, sell it faster, sell it quicker, whatever. So Gene's ideas were never.
Hang on.
It's
Sorry.
the heavy metal pug.
Did we? We forgot to mention we have Coco
Once again,
our heavy metal pug with us, who I will just quickly beat. Coco, shut up! You see, I learned that from a dog whisperer. Yeah. But I tell you what as well, because that also plays into the American dream, the mythology, which is based on this reality, which is these aren't just people that wanted to dream of a better tomorrow. These are people that left behind they may as well have been going to Mars. That would be the modern equivalent. A horrendous journey, no guarantee of safety or success or even a welcome when you got there. But just this desperate flight to... You're one of these people that will get off their arse and travel a galaxy away in the hope that
it'll be somehow better,
and that you have a little hope, a little faith in yourself that you're the kind of guy that will go out and do the hours, the work, the time. You know, it's not going to come good for at least a generation.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think Gene started off making the classic thing. You know, you take something to school and sell it to your schoolmates, and you know, all
was
of a
that
sudden,
how he met Paul?
Yeah, I don't know. Strangely enough, in the Gene Simmons Get Rich book, there wasn't a lot about Paul Stanley. I'm not sure why.
Did you read the Paul Stanley book?
I didn't read the Paul Stanley book. I didn't.
There's a reason for that.
There isn't a Paul Stanley book?
No, there is a Paul Stanley book.
Okay.
The reason you didn't read it...
Did they all do a book and release it on the same day?
That would have been
That
great,
would have been fantastic,
that would have been
wouldn't
fantastic.
it?
Yeah, they missed a trick. There's still time.
Yeah, they
Still
could
time.
actually... Doc?
Yeah.
Hello, Doc?
Yeah. By the time we finish this podcast, they'll
Doc
have
will have done
announced
that.
the publication.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what I was going to say. What were we on about?
Gene and Paul. Oh, no, the Paul book.
Oh, yeah, there's a reason you haven't read the Paul book. And it's the same reason I haven't read the Paul book. And it's this. No one has read the fucking Paul book.
Yeah.
It came out and you know, tumbleweed. Crickets.
Yeah, probably at the time that everyone had done one again. You know, it was that thing of... The dirt was, you know, the dirt was the text.
Right.
The dirt was the obelisk from 2001. You know, it started everything.
But
and then
Kiss go
and
as
yeah,
far
and
as
Doc,
that?
obviously Doc. I remember interviewing Doc, and him. He had this great line about the dirt because obviously he was manager of Motley Crue for much of the dirt, but then kind of got fired halfway through the book. I think
parted company.
Yeah.
That's what you mean.
One thing he was very open about being fired, wasn't he? He was fired after the Moscow Peace Festival?
Moscow Music Peace Festival.
The Peace Festival, yeah. Were Kiss at that?
No, he didn't. Doc didn't manage Kiss till 1995.
No, I know they, but I didn't know if Kiss were on the bill.
But see if you can work out the bill for the Moscow Music Peace Festival when I tell you who Doc was managing at the stage. Skid Row.
Yeah, so Skid Row were on, yeah, check.
Scorpions.
And let's not forget, let's set the scene, first of all, because the Moscow Peace Festival was putting straight a great wrong in the world. And that wasn't just world peace. That was Doc McGhee's conviction for smuggling marijuana into America.
Yes, which I think only like 40,000 tons, though, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
but
Something like that.
that's by the by how much it was.
But you see, this is where Doc was ahead of the curve because, back then,
That's what he got busted for.
What they called drugs.
Imagine how much he got in before they caught on.
They would call marijuana drugs in those days. But,
That's true. It's medicinal these days.
Well, it's like these days. It's like hemp.
Yeah,
or veganism.
It's natural.
It's natural.
He probably Doc should have said, "Look, I'm making trousers out of this dope, hemp trousers, because all the kids want to wear them these days."
I think Doc did think that's what the weed was for. I think he literally just thought this is going to benefit mankind.
Yeah, in some way or another.
Either now or at some unspecified
and I will
point.
selflessly
hire
a massive boat
and plane
and
several
whatever
workers.
else. I mean, and a few of my pals in Florida,
in that industry,
in South Carolina or North Carolina, wherever it was. And they'll sail across and it'll land and we'll unload the hemp trousers.
Like
and
Columbus.
We'll take them to a warehouse.
Like Columbus.
Yeah, that's right.
Heading for the new world with a new promise.
Yeah. And Doc was rudely interrupted in this endeavour by the cops.
By the DEA.
And whoever the hell else.
The cock-sucking DEA.
Just looking for a payday, those guys.
Yeah.
And
missed the uniform.
Yeah. So Doc has to do a bit of a deal here, a deal there, a bit of backsliding with the old
he's a deal
lead prosecutor, whoever the guy was.
He distills
He distills.
a difficult
so
situation.
Doc goes,
he solves problems.
Doc goes, here's the okay. You got in Doc's voice. You got the problem here. Whatever. He's got that kind of voice. But he goes, well, what you could either do is you could either bust me for all that, but who does that help? Who does that benefit?
Who does that benefit?
Or I can take all my bands to Russia, that country you so love, and we can put on a peace festival.
Yeah.
Just for the world. No, don't look on it as being for Russia or to get Doc McGhee off a drugs charge.
No,
that's not what it's for.
That's the least. That's the least
that's
concern.
a reason, but it's not the reason.
Yes.
So into a plane get.
Yes.
Surprisingly enough, all of the bands that Doc manages.
Ambassadors.
And the year, what year was it? 89 maybe?
Ambassadors for anti-drink and drug abuse.
Like Vince
such
Neil.
as Vince Neil, Tommy Lee.
Yeah.
Sebastian Bach.
Mick Mars, who was conscious for part of the trip, I heard.
And the only band he didn't manage was Ozzy.
Oh, Ozzy just went anyway?
Yeah, Ozzy and Sharon.
Because he thought it'd be cool.
I tell you what, there's a great YouTube clip of the beginning of Bon Jovi's show. Right? 'Cause the other band got managed.
The other band famously dedicated to world peace.
Bon Jovi, that's right. And Aerosmith were also supposed to be on the bill, but they got wind of what was going on.
Yeah.
Because Doc had told them all, I can't remember 1 hour, 50 minutes, whatever, but for argument's sake, you've all got 1 hour.
Yeah.
There's no headliner, but Bon Jovi will be going on last. That's all it is.
But all the kids will be going home at that point.
They don't know who Bon Jovi
They don't know
Bon Jovi. They don't care. They're Russian. What do they care?
Yeah.
So, and there would be no pyro, no nothing. Okay, it's bare bones. It's
300-foot fireball.
No, definitely
this
not.
Gig.
Definitely not. This is check your egos at the door.
Yeah.
An hour each.
Because we're here for peace. We're here for
peace.
Yeah.
Bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
So the eve of the first show, Motley have discovered, although there's no running order, they have discovered that Ozzy is coming on a little later than them.
Yeah, just
Shall we
later.
put it like that?
I think later's the key word, not
later.
not ahead
bigger,
of.
not ahead of.
No,
not bigger on the bill.
Yeah.
Just
later in the evening.
In fact, do you know what I said? Skid Row. I don't know if Skid Row were there. Actually.
I kind of think
I don't know if
Doc did manage them. So
he did manage them at that
just
point.
They probably were there.
Yeah,
I mean,
in his
Sebastian
heart.
would have wanted to go, wouldn't he? He'd have been one of the few who actually thought, this will be cool.
Shall we just say they were there?
Let's say they were
Fuck
there.
it, they were there.
Dave Snake Sabo was on the plane writing out his manifesto for harmony.
Yeah. I can't. I'm
in the
just.
world.
I'm sidetracked here, trying to remember because I was there.
Yeah, well,
I
so
was
obviously
there.
you've got a very clear memory of
I have a
everyone else.
very, very
who
clear
was there.
memory on the fact that I was there.
Yeah.
I can't vouch 100%
For anyone else.
anybody else. No.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's this kerfuffle, and anyway, the whole thing goes ahead, and Motley are also kind of, are you sure we can't have any? No one's having pyro. No 300-foot fireball for you, my tattooed friends.
Yeah.
So there's a great YouTube clip.
You're just going to have to rely on your songs. Oh.
So anyway, they do the whole thing, and then it gets to the end of the night, and last on the bill, let's put it like that,
Yeah.
last on the bill of
Bringing
Bon
up the rear.
and the whole gig starts with pyro.
Yeah,
The starts or ends, probably both. But here's the great thing. Okay, no one's got any kind of, no one's got any of that crap. It's the show starts, and at the mixing desk, which is out in the middle of the crowd, that's where John Bon Jovi starts it from. He's wearing a Russian soldier's coat and hat. And they're doing "Lay Your Hands on Me."
Yeah.
So he's
of course
walking
they
through
are.
the "Lay
Your hands on me, lay your hands on me, lay your hands on me.
And of course, you've got these Russians all laying their fucking hands
their
on their
horrible
bodyguards,
Russian hands.
smashing them in the face.
Yeah.
Fuck off, Stravinsky. Fuck off, Igor. Get your hairy
Rasputin.
paw off the star. So, of course, it takes him about 5 hours to get to the stage. Meanwhile, 4th of fucking July.
Yeah.
And then they do like a 2-hour show, And,
With all the hits.
and you'll be amazed to learn that Nikki Sixx, Tommy Lee, Vince Neil, and the charismatic Mick Mars didn't fucking like that.
No.
Didn't like it, I say. So so it was agreed that they would part company
on good terms.
on very good terms.
But
yes.
he does appear in, he's regularly appears in the dirt as a problem solver when, various things have gone wrong.
I tell you what, the stories Doc has told me, which will remain just that for now until he puts them all in his book. But the amount of stuff he had to deal with any band, but Motley.
Yeah.
Dear
We
God.
see there was the ridiculous thing about the dirt was, and as I was going to tell you what Doc's great line was when I mentioned the dirt. He goes, well, some of it was true, and I think that's right. I think the problem is they've gone down the road of when you've got the truth and the legend, print the legend, which is the old maxim.
Yeah.
But in Motley Crue's case, actually, it's one of the very, very rare occasions when the truth was better.
Yeah. In fact, it was more a case of tell the lie.
Don't print the truth.
Whatever you do, don't print the truth.
Yeah,
Not all of it
because that's
anyway.
too horrible.
That's way too horrible.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to Kiss.
Yes.
So just to remind everybody, here on New Year's Eve, because we know you come straight to the pod, the day it's aired,
Released, whatever it is.
premieres.
Premieres. I
Premiere,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's probably not. So you're looking back. Anyway, you missed it. It was a great gig. Oh, I assume it was a great gig.
Oh,
I mean, we're
it would have
recording
been
this a
great.
little bit ahead of time, aren't
Yeah,
we, John? So Kiss are a phenomenon. And I thought rather than, get into the minutiae, which would require work and research.
All that stuff. Who
fucking
cares
mad,
about
yeah,
that?
exactly.
You know what the albums were. We know what the albums were.
But I think they... Can you hear that pug?
That's the pug.
That's
yeah.
the pug.
That's what he thinks of the early part of Kiss's career.
I've heard old men snore less loudly.
Yeah.
Okay. To me, there's Kiss in the 70s, Kiss in the 80s.
Yeah. The best Kiss.
And then,
in my view.
a bold claim, my
Yeah.
friend. And then there's the big comeback of Kiss.
Yeah,
in
which
the
is now,
late
which is
90s.
the
up to now.
sort of the nostalgia of Kiss. and I don't use that in a pejorative sense at all. Kiss are now about nostalgia because that whole generation of people who grew up with the lunchboxes and the radios and all the rest of it, now they've had their own lives. They've been successful, hopefully, in those lives. And, they want to see a 300-foot fireball. They want to see Gene Simmons on the other end of it.
They do, but I actually think they are post-nostalgia.
Post-nostalgia, yeah, it could be, yeah.
Because
whatever,
I think
whatever comes after nostalgia.
I think the nostalgia, was a 90s thing, if you like, or an early 2000s, a dawn of classic rock. But I think where they are now, I've been lucky enough to see Kiss play quite a few times, obviously not in 2020, but in 2019.
Some would call that luck.
No, I tell you what.
No, they're great. No,
one thing about Kiss,
they know how to play the old.
They are amazing.
Yeah, proper band. Yeah.
First time I saw them was in 1984 at Wembley Arena when Bon Jovi was the opening act.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I was stunned. What an amazing show it was. And I didn't realise until I saw them live at that point, obviously that this is the no makeup years.
Yeah.
How an incredible frontman Paul Stanley
Oh, he's
is.
just, yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that in a bit.
Well, let's talk about it now.
Well,
Are you waiting for the Kiss podcast?
No, but I think you were going to go on and say.
Oh, okay. So I have been lucky enough to see them a few times in the last, call it, year and a half, 2 years. And when they did the O2 Arena in London, my God, man, the Kiss shop, the Kiss merchandise store, there were longer queues and more crowds in there than you'd get at the Hammersmith Apollo on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
There was like a separate phenomenon going on. And the queue crocodiled, they had all the turn barriers now.
Yeah.
So it went bong, 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 like 8, 9, 10, 11 rows. And mainly it was adults with children.
Right.
And I thought, what this reminds me of, or puts me in mind of, is if, obviously for the olders, there'll be a degree of nostalgia or frisson with the thing you liked when you were much younger. But most of all, they're going to the circus. They're going to see the Star Wars musical. Yeah. They're going to see We Will Rock You.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think, and this has always been Gene's idea, hasn't it? And it's a very valid idea because drawing the We Will Rock You comparison is a very good one, in that you go and see the show. You're not necessarily going to see the people who are in the show.
No.
You're going to see the show itself.
Yes.
So, Gene's idea that Kiss can outlive Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley and become a generational show that just carries on with a revolving cast of performers is actually probably a valid one.
Well, it's Cirque du Soleil. It's bigger than that. Much bigger than that.
Because now, and Stanley has been a fantastic frontman, we have to say.
Amazing.
One of the great rock and roll frontmen.
Amazing.
And he has that thing, you might sort of put him in the Roth category for frontman antics, but he's also got the voice. He had a fabulous voice. I don't know what state it's in now.
Still pretty
Probably
good.
still good, as long as he doesn't overuse it. But I think, he'll be difficult to replace. But he's getting to the point where, you say they're not going to keep playing shows forever. They're not going to be, well, they might be, but they're probably not going to be 75 and still jumping off the drum riser.
This is still their farewell tour they're on.
Yeah, well, it's like. Yes. Look, Frank Sinatra had that one cracked, didn't he, all those years ago?
Well, the degree of cynicism in this conversation.
Even if it were, you're not going to see Paul being Paul forever, no pun intended. But so, yes, subsequent generations are going to want to see a guy who kind of looks and sounds a bit like Paul Stanley.
Well, if you're wearing all that stuff, who's to know?
Well, that was Doc's great thing, wasn't it?
Getting them back to do that.
Yeah. Well, no, also, did he not pull one of his tricks? I don't know if it was Doc. I probably shouldn't. I don't want to. It's a funny trick. It's not. They were in Australia and someone spotted that I think the drummer wasn't the drummer, because he sort of was ill for a couple of shows, so they just shoved some guy in the makeup, and it was sort of pre-smartphones and that kind of thing. And this guy did a couple of shows dressed as the drummer. It was something like that. I can't remember the full ins and outs
we can
of
neither
it.
confirm
Neither
nor
confirm. It was
deny.
funny. It wasn't a horrible.
I tell you what, though.
thing,
So let's begin then with Kiss in the 70s. Now,
Yeah.
I remember that era with a slightly different perspective to you because I'm older. I'm older than everybody at this point. The only person people older than me are in fact Gene
Kiss,
and Paul.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Ace. Let's not forget Ace. All too easily forgotten Ace.
And why I said there was no backstory, at least in the UK, was because Kiss didn't mean anything in this country except to those that knew. And those that knew were really in a very small minority. The only music, there were 4 main music papers in the UK. We must remind people that was our entire social media, because in the UK we had 3 TV channels, 1 national music channel, none of whom liked to play hard rock or what we later called metal. And Kiss, without any hit singles, just never, ever, you would never see them on Top of the Pops, or you didn't see them in the music press. The only magazine you ever saw them in those days was Sounds magazine. And that's because Jeff Barton, who later became instrumental in the launch of, well, it wasn't really a launch, but the coming into existence of Kerrang, happened to be a massive Kiss fan. But he was also a Rush fan, and a Ted Nugent fan, and a Styx fan, and all these groups that meant absolutely fuck all in the UK. Mainly we knew Kiss through the pictures and the makeup.
Yeah.
But because we'd just come out of glam, we'd come out of Alice Cooper, David Bowie, Peter Gabriel dressing up as a
Flower.
whatever that was, a flower, and then an ugly alien thing. The era was one
Slipper
of
Man.
Yeah.
The Slipper Man from
Man.
from Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
It was an era where rock was becoming more cinematic with concept albums, double albums. They would put on a proper show at the theatre, which would be laughable these days, but I was seeing an old pantomime.
Yeah.
It was still all ropes and magic curtains, Oh, they've got a laser. I remember seeing the first shows of laser.
I remember
dreadful.
it must have been maybe Reading Rock 1982 or something like that, and Alice Cooper headlined. And that was a massive thing because no one had really seen Alice Cooper particularly. Not of my...
Well, not for a while.
Yeah, not for a while,
been here.
He'd been, and he did the guillotine thing.
All right, yeah.
And that was literally a magic trick, wasn't it? It was done in the same way that Paul Daniels or someone would do it. The head goes into the guillotine, it comes down, he lifts it up and it's his head. It's fantastic. It was great. But as you say, it was very much a sort of...
And then the shock of realising it wasn't real.
It wasn't real.
That
But no, I do
be
remember
quite a shock.
That sort of... You're right. There was that kind of disconnect.
So here comes Kiss.
Yeah.
In all this at the time, really, like talk about taking it a stage further. They were cartoons. They were living cartoons.
I suppose they were a bit like on the sort of level of fame of someone like Hulk Hogan would have been over here as well. You kind of heard about them.
Yes.
You kind of knew who they were, and you knew they were big and American. And it was like, what we knew of America back then, before you went there, was what you'd seen on TV.
Yeah.
So it would be Detective, Kojak or Starsky and Hutch or
Yeah.
those kind of things. And you were aware that America was this massive place and everything was bigger there. The bands were bigger.
Yes, and you kind of made allowances for the fact that because there was already this idea that in America, like when David Bowie first made it in America, he did well with the Ziggy Stardust thing, but gold record, top 40.
Yeah.
What sent him multiplat was when a year after he'd done the farewell to Ziggy, There's No More Spiders from Mars. It's still an incredibly theatrical... Coco! beat him, John. Take the stick and beat him. It was still a very theatrical show, but musically he had a hard rock band, and everything was kind of reconfigured to be less this kind of glam pop rock thing from the UK and more this hard rock, Iggy, Detroit, New York, hard ass type of thing.
Yeah.
And that helped him get across to the Midwest, the flyover states, the rock fans that didn't like gay men dressing up with makeup and singing about aliens.
Yeah,
it wasn't their first
port of call.
It wasn't their first port of call.
Yeah.
But big macho guys dressed as something out of Star Wars, singing about Detroit Rock City.
That's their port of
call. Now you've got a glam rock that they can relate to.
Yeah, yeah.
In the same way that Alice Cooper was, a dude with a chick's name.
Yeah.
And weird shit on his face.
Yeah.
But that band, that Alice Cooper band, they kicked some fucking ass.
Yeah.
And I think Kiss that's where they came in. But I think there was, amongst people that read music papers and bought LPs in the UK, or certainly anywhere outside of America, had this idea that it was a sort of peculiarly American phenomenon, and that it wasn't one that we particularly could relate to.
No. And I think that was sort of partly musical as well, maybe, in that when you first heard Kiss, and if you heard them just through the radio or on album, detached from the surrounding image and the rest of it, they actually weren't that spectacular. They weren't that great.
No.
Detached from all of that, put them with all of that stuff. Whereas, you mentioned Rush earlier. Actually, Rush were better when you didn't have to look at them, because they had the stupid kimonos or whatever. But 2112 sounded amazing. What's that concept album about the, people taking over the planet? Yeah, I'll have some of that.
Well, exactly.
Flashy musicianship and all the rest of it.
You could say Rush were like the thinking man's Kiss.
Yeah, and actually, they toured together, didn't they? Famously for a while, and Rush are very funny about that era of touring with Kiss, and credit Kiss with teaching them a lot.
Yeah,
it was. There's a really good Rush documentary. I'm trying to think what one it is, because there's 2 or 3. But Geddy and Alex sit down and talk about these early tours with Kiss. And Rush were really, they were still kind of rock bottom guys. They were in a van that they'd bought themselves.
Yeah.
And they're following Kiss along, and they're in their kind of bog standard hotel. And Kiss are sort of a bit, but Kiss sort of start to think Rush are quite funny. They're quite fun to hang out with, because Alex Lifeson's if you don't know, Alex is a funny guy. He's a good sense of humour. And he invented some character who was called like a bag man or something, where they'd all get stoned. And he'd put this paper bag over his head that had a face drawn on it. And then they'd go and torment Ace Frehley, who hated Bagman. He was quite scared of Bagman. So they go and hate. And one occasion they said that they went into Gene's room. Geddy was like pissing himself laughing about this, because Gene had done the whole thing of like inviting these groupies back, and he's giving it the big I am.
You got it right the first time, man.
They're back there. All of a sudden there's Alex with a paper bag on his head talking in a stupid voice, and the groupies get up and go. And Gene's like, "Oh fuck you, man! You've cock blocked me, man, with a bag on your head."
See, that reminds me. We're not usually one to sidetrack, as people will know, but that reminds me of a story Ozzy told me once about the very first Black Sabbath tour of America. And he said we couldn't believe it, because in the UK and Europe, everywhere else we'd ever played, we never used to get any women at the shows. If you saw a woman at the show, you'd be nudging each other on stage. A woman at the show. Yeah. She must be someone's carer, or
it's a mistake.
Yeah, you brought your girlfriend.
She thought it was something to do with the church, Sabbath. Exactly. It's on the Sabbath.
Either a nun.
Yeah, it was probably a Sunday.
Or a satanic slut.
Yeah.
Either one you don't want to mess with.
No.
He said, we got to America. He said, literally the first day, they turn up at this shithole hotel in New York. He said, there are chicks everywhere. He said, they were coming up to me going, I want to ball you. I want to ball you. He said, we had no idea what's ball.
Yeah.
You want to ball me?
Yeah.
Fucking hell, what's that?
Yeah.
He said, but anyway, we figured it out. He said, but the only trouble was he said, you know, we used to get the groupies. Our groupies used to be worse looking than the groupies that other bands' roadies got.
Yeah.
He said, we used to call them, because they were also sharing rooms at this point.
Yeah.
He said, we used to call them two baggers, because what we used to say was, you'd have to put a bag over her head to shag her. He said, but then if someone came in the room, so you'd have a second bag which you'd put over your head, so that not only could they not see how ugly the girl was, but they didn't know who was shagging her.
Clever.
There's 4 of us in the group.
Yeah.
3 of us are standing here without bags on our heads. Who could that be?
Could that one?
Ozzy.
Ozzy.
Who could that be?
Ozzy still hadn't worked it out.
2 baggers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, back to Kiss. I mean, actually, Black Sabbath, another very kind of good model for Kiss, because this hard rock, heavy metal thing, but the image, you know, Black Sabbath, the crosses, that whole thing that preceded them. This was the dawning of the age of rock as theatre.
A spectacle, yeah.
Spectacle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I suppose really, Destroyer aside, the big breakthrough for Kiss was the Alive album.
Well, I was going to say, you hit the nail on the head. We both did when we said albums not so remarkable, live shows some other level, completely other level, amazing, and they got better and better as the years went by. And of course, the thing that finally breaks them in America is the double album Alive. Yeah.
And that, you know, it's that kind of marriage of the whole thing, as you say. It's more of an experience if you're seeing them than if you're just listening to them, even though on the live album you are just listening to them. But it's kind of taking you there in that way. You know, the packaging and all of that was fantastic, wasn't it?
The photos.
And actually, when Alive 2 came out, there was, you know, it was a huge hoo-ha. Even Alive 3, which is a particular favourite of mine, there was a hoo-ha about that. And then Alive 4, which is I think that's the orchestral one, isn't it? It's like Kiss with the Australian Philharmonic, which again is a classic gene. Like everyone's done it, but now Kiss are going to do it. You know,
and it will be just a bit more Kiss-tastic.
Yeah. Well, all the orchestra wore the makeup, and they looked at it. It did look fantastic because you got 50 people all wearing the makeup, and then Kiss themselves. You know, so
I love this. I love this, but it took a long time in America, where it was a little bit more two-dimensional in the sense that they kick ass musically, and they look like fucking Star Wars characters. You know, although they came before Star Wars. You might say Star Wars characters look like Kiss.
Well, I don't know if they did they? I mean,
don't really.
I don't really know Star Wars, but I don't remember seeing anyone like Kiss.
Well, you know, maybe you didn't see the movie properly.
I don't think
maybe you need to see it again.
Yeah, watch it again.
Since it's been digitally...
with McGhee Simmons Kiss glasses.
That's right, and your gauntlet. So, but... no video in those days, and I can tell you, I used to love live albums as a teenager because you would sit there with the whole gatefold.
Yeah, live albums were better. Well, first of all, there's
and you're listening to a concert, so now in your mind you're
there.
at the concert,
and invariably they're doubles. That's the thing. It's like twice as long, twice as good, and all the songs you already know, but better.
Yeah, well, the best
liver.
Well, the best album, arguably, Thin Lizzy ever put out was the live double, Live and Dangerous.
Yeah,
like a greatest hits.
I mean, but all
better.
of them, you could kind of go through. You know, Rainbow on Stage was a great record. You know, a double album. Rush broke through with All the World's a Stage. You know, which I remember buying. Great double live album from their sort of early era. You know, and then went on to make Exit Stage Left, which was another fantastic double live album.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Seconds Out, Genesis, classic double live. Live Killers, Queen. It was just the thing.
But do you remember the moment Kiss had their sort of commercial breakthrough in the UK?
No. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't.
Because I think the makeup had gone by then. And I think, in my memory anyway, the record that I remember kind of getting into the charts here, maybe there being a tiny little filmed clip on top of the pops or something, was when Kiss went disco.
Oh, yes,
I
probably.
was made for loving you, baby. You were made for loving me.
I can't get enough. Yeah, I do remember that.
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure they had taken the makeup off. Now, John, could you give us a 60-second soliloquy while I adjourn to the
Because he's
toilet?
very old. He's got to
Very
go.
old.
But he's also got to go.
I'm
And,
just going to go in the corner and piss in the corner.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's my soliloquy going to be about?
Well, how they transitioned from American cartoons
Oh, I
to
see.
disco divas.
Well, I don't know. The answer to that is, sadly, I don't know. Was it about the time that Gene began his relationship with Diana Ross? And also, I think here is the real moment that it began, is the label Casablanca, which I think Kiss were somehow signed to through various subsidiaries, or they created, or what have you. Mick will tell us in a minute when he's back from the bathroom, is that Casablanca were very big in disco music, and that was the connection with Kiss and how it came about. I wouldn't swear to that, but my rock and roll colleague is back.
What wouldn't you swear to?
I was just saying, I think the connection came. I do remember it was probably about the time that Gene was going out with Diana Ross.
Now, there you go.
But I think the real connection, as I just mentioned, was Casablanca Records, who Kiss were, who Kiss were either signed to or subsidiary of, and Casablanca had a few massive disco hits, didn't they?
They really did.
So again, Gene probably went, look, hang on, this is something I can do in my way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's exactly what happened. And also, even Kiss can only release so many
He's
live
back,
double
by the way.
albums. And I think they were kind of post-punk, post-disco.
They're in that lull that all bands get, that sort of mid-career lull of what do we do?
Yeah, how do we...
Taking the makeup off was a huge gimmick. But the problem is, once you've done it, then what do you do? Actually, you're just a couple of kind of quite ugly. Well, Stanley's not, but Gene's. No, the God of Thunder's great, and he slept.
What?
He has slept with 20,000 women or whatever it is. But he's not on the. He's not Brad Pitt.
Isn't he?
He's not even David Lee Roth.
Isn't he though?
He's not even Vince Neil.
He's not even a fat Vince Neil.
No.
No. Well, I'm gonna take issue.
So he's probably. So anyway, what I was going to say, the makeup's off. The problem with that is what do you then do once the makeup's off? You get all the publicity around the makeup's off. What do they look like? It's because we have to say it, Kiss went to great lengths to never be photographed without the makeup. It was the big thing, wasn't it? And someone might have once got half a shot or something, and it was even in Rolling Stone. Is this the real face of Kiss?
Isn't that great though?
Yeah.
And also in this weird era we live in, they were I remember seeing pictures of Gene on the cover of Sounds with a face mask,
right?
A surgical face mask.
Yeah.
Again, ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Ahead of the curve by several decades.
Yeah.
But you're right. There was this whole thing about, oh my God, we can finally see them, and then of course that wears off pretty quick.
Yeah.
And what are you left with at that point? The music.
Well, it's like that. It's like that Stephen King. Stephen King always says in his books, the monster's always scarier before you show people what it is. So you don't show it to them till at the end of the story. You get to see the monster, and it's like that. If Kiss made a mistake with the makeup, that was what it was. But they couldn't have stayed in the makeup forever anyway.
No,
so
and also it gives them something to talk about.
Yeah,
and then
for
of course
a while.
one day.
Yeah. And then I suppose what happens is it coincides with Bon Jovi coming along, Europe coming along, the rise of the early iterations of hair metal, 84, 85, before hair metal was everywhere. But when actually hair's starting to be back-combed, the clothes gone through that kind of Miami Vice type phrase, so it's all acid colours, and all of a sudden Kiss looked very different,
Well, they certainly had the whole hair
they
thing.
boot Ace out. Ace finally gets the old heave-ho. So now it's just Gene and Paul because...
And what about, don't forget Peter, the cat.
Well, he gets the...
Elbow.
as well, doesn't he?
Yes, But I think while they were still wearing the makeup, it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
And then when they took the makeup off, it kind of suddenly didn't matter because you didn't have the famous cat makeup and Space Ace, was it?
Because when Vinnie Vincent joined, he wore makeup, didn't he? Because he was Ace's first replacement. He wore makeup. They've gone to sleep.
Explain the snore.
Yeah. He wore makeup. But then the makeup sort of came off after that, didn't it?
Quite soon
after that, because Bruce Kulick, who comes in, is the classic, good-looking, wears a vest, has his hair combed back, he's a kind of 80s, mid-80s rock guitarist.
So Bruce wasn't bald?
Bob was bald.
Oh, the brother.
Yeah, you're
But
getting
not Bruce.
confused. There were two.
There were two.
It's not the same guy.
It's not the same guy.
No, it's
I
not
just
the same.
thought
That's why they had different names.
Oh right,
so they could distinguish between.
I thought it was his Kiss name.
His Kiss name was Bruce rather than Bob.
Yes, I see. Right,
No,
but
Bob
in
was the
real
one
life,
in Meatloaf. Bob went off with Meatloaf.
where he shaved his head and was no longer in Kiss.
Yeah.
That's right. I actually tried to contact. Was it Bruce that was in Meatloaf?
See, this is probably why you didn't
Bob.
get through.
No, this is exactly why I didn't get through. It was Bob that was in Meatloaf then.
Bob was with Meatloaf.
The bald one.
The bald guy.
Okay.
He was sort of more famous until Bruce got the gig in Kiss, I think.
I contacted Bruce
Right.
to explain to him how I had first met him on the 1984 Meatloaf tour, had always really loved his guitar playing, and it would be a damn shame if I didn't interview him for my Meatloaf book. And he never got back to me. And it was about a year later, I suddenly went, oopsie, I should have been contacting Bob.
Yeah, and you contacted Bruce.
I contacted Bruce.
Isn't Bob dead? I don't know.
Bob's dead?
I don't know. I can't.
Bob's dead?
I've got a feeling one of them is.
No, not Bruce. 'Cause I actually met Bruce
This
a
is
year
really
ago
confusing.
on the Kiss cruise.
Even I can't work out who you've met and who you haven't now.
Bruce was on the Kiss cruise.
Okay, but he's not in Kiss anymore.
No, but he was on the Kiss cruise and he got up
As a punter.
pretty much.
Trying to get his dough out of Gene.
Pretty much.
Gene, remember me?
No, he did as the ship sailed out of Miami Harbour.
He's joined the Navy.
The band were doing an unplugged, so no makeup, nothing.
Yeah.
A set around the pool as the ship took off. The weird part was the ship took off an hour late, so they were just finishing as it actually took off. But Bruce got up. Say it was a 2-hour show. Bruce got up for like the last hour.
Yeah. Well, Bruce was the guitarist at the time of Kiss Alive 3.
Right.
The reason I know this is because he gets his acoustic out on Forever, my favourite Kiss song, which is written by Mr. Michael Bolton.
Forever.
Forever.
How's that one go?
I'm not going to sing it
on.
because you need to be
Go
Paul
on.
Stanley to sing it. You need to be Paul Stanley or Michael Bolton in order to sing it. It goes into a
but
tremendously high register.
got a good voice.
I want to tell you what I'm feeling inside. That one,
Rings a bell.
Yeah, and then it goes.
It could be a Journey song.
Have you seen the guy who does?
Or REO
there's a
Speedway.
guy.
Or Bon Jovi.
There's a guy in a Kiss tribute band, and he's done a video on YouTube of him dressed up as Paul Stanley, and he goes into McDonald's and orders in the style of Paul Stanley's stage introductions.
Go on,
So he walks in and goes, "Can I get a Big Mac?" Guy's just looking at him, "And I'll have some fries with it." It's sensational because when
300-foot fireballs going off in
because
the back.
if you listen to the Kiss live albums, one of the great pleasures of Kiss live albums are Stanley's introductions because he always sings the last bit.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
He always does that.
Yeah. See, when he's doing that,
Girls, let me hear you, girls. You hear all that, and then you go,
So anyway, they take the makeup off, and it does give their career a bump.
a boost. Well, as I was sort of going on to say, what they do is they, as Bon Jovi did, and several bands of that ilk, they suddenly think hit singles. They get the really good writers in, so the aforementioned Michael Bolton, who was writing hits for people long before he went off and did it, well, not long before he did his solo stuff. Holly Knight,
Yeah.
Desmond Child,
Yeah.
who, of course, had risen to prominence at that time from co-writing the Bon Jovi songs. That strangely, the Jove never managed to exactly reproduce.
No, see, John and Richie came up with those songs. Desmond just came in and
polished them.
gave them a bit of a polish.
Yeah,
That's all he did.
That's all he
and
did.
these fake news demos of Desmond Child doing "Living on a Prayer" as a piano ballad several years before.
Yeah.
That's just fake news.
That's fake news, man. Because John wrote that.
That's right, and Richie.
And Richie.
John wrote most of
Ozzy.
it. Richie wrote quite a lot
Bit of it, a little bit of it.
And Desmond Child, I mean, he barely wrote anything.
Any of it. But
Any of it.
coincidentally, it sounded a lot like a lot of Desmond Child songs. But no, and there's nothing against kissing that. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Get the guys in who are capable or who are writing the hits du jour. These are the people who are writing hit singles for everyone. Why not have a few for Kiss? And they wrote some tremendous stuff for Kiss.
Do you know what I noticed at that time, though, when they took the makeup off and so forth and got into videos and that? It reminded me of, like, I was watching a program on TV the other day, and it showed a clip from the pilot episode of Roseanne.
Oh, yeah.
And the husband, what's his name in real life?
Is he not just called Dan or John?
No, in real life.
Oh, John Goodman.
John Goodman, there you go. Now, we now know John Goodman as a major star, but back then, it just was Roseanne's, you didn't know anything about him. And I was saying to my kids, do you know who that guy is? And I eventually had to explain it was Sully from Monsters, Inc. Have you seen Monsters, Inc.?
I know what it is.
Okay, well, my children were the right age.
Right,
When that
exactly.
came
Yeah, it's
out,
like mine were the Lion King.
yours were a little bit older.
I know all of that
I
stuff.
saw Monsters Inc. about 4 million times. If it got them to bed at night.
Yeah, I'd watch it happily.
But they were saying, this is quite right, because the little guy Mike in Monsters Inc. is played by Billy Crystal.
Right.
And even though he's a one-eyed alien, he so looks like Billy Crystal. And Sully in Monsters Inc. is basically John Goodman as a monster.
Yeah.
And we were kind of talking about this, and it made me realise that when Gene and Paul took off the makeup, you realise that they actually do look like those monsters. They kind of built those monsters on how they really look. Now, I know, of course, it goes without saying if it's just makeup, but it was the first time I realised, that whole kissing was sort of based on real people.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
In a strange way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And now here they are. So even though they didn't have the makeup on, I was still having this kind of filtered double mental image of them with the makeup, because Gene would do that pose.
Yeah. I mean,
and the tongue
it's
would
still
come
him.
out.
Yeah, it's obviously
Still his tongue.
Yeah.
Because
it's his
if
real
nothing
tongue.
else is real about Gene, the tongue was.
The tongue is very.
And
the hair,
fire.
not so much, but the tongue.
And of course, this is when they come up with some of their, I think, greatest ever material. Item number 1. These are crazy nights.
Yeah.
I mean, the intro.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, all of a sudden, it's this is
and Paul Stanley going, yeah, I just can't I mean, it's just fantastic Kiss-like riff.
Lick it up. Lick it up. Lick it up. Oh, it's only right now. That's a fantastic Stanley ad-lib. He's a really good ad-libber as well. It's only right now.
But wasn't it Gene that sang that song?
I can't remember if it was or not. Was it? No, Paul sings Lick It Up.
Are you sure?
I'm sure he does.
I would have thought it'd be Gene with the tongue.
On the live album, Paul sings it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because I always thought they wrote the song to go with Gene's tongue.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
Lick it up. I'm doing a tongue here right now.
Making a tongue manoeuvre.
Yeah.
No, but you're right, they did. Another absolutely cracking...
I'll tell you one they did, which wasn't a hit, but I thought was a great title, which was going to be the follow-up to Crazy Nights.
Ooh, yeah.
And to set context, Paul told me this. backstage.
Paul Stanley, his close
Paul
personal
Stanley.
friend of Mick Wall.
Backstage at the Monsters of Rock show in Holland in 1988. I think Crazy had been a hit the year before or something.
Because I think it was a bigger hit in Europe than it was in America, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
Yeah. It was definitely a big hit in Europe, yeah.
Okay, so Paul Stanley is there, and he's with Samantha Fox.
Oh, they did, didn't they?
They did the deed.
Yeah.
Now, people that don't know, Samantha Fox in the 80s was the most famous, what used to be called Page 3 girl.
She was.
The Sun newspaper, you'd open it, and there on page 3 would be a topless young lady.
Yeah.
Top totty,
Yeah.
as I think the phrase was at the time.
But it was all sold as being...
Can you just kick the puck?
No, I'm
kick
not going to
it.
kick it. But it was all sold as being very innocent. It was innocent nudity.
Well, yes, although Samantha Fox had enormous breasts. I don't know if you remember that. They were actually bigger than her.
That's one of the things I do remember about her.
That's two of the things I remember about Samantha.
And she'll be very keen to tell you she did go on to have a hit career as a pop singer herself, didn't she? As well?
She did, in a very kind of kiss-tastic way, with the black leather jacket and the tassels.
Yeah, all that stuff.
But, so her and Paul are dating. They're dating. And Paul says to me, I've got the next song. And he looks at Samantha and he goes, it's called You Put the X in Sex.
Oh, I do remember that one. Yeah.
I remember thinking, what a brilliant title.
It's a good title, that. Yeah.
But it wasn't a hit.
Astonishingly, not everyone thought it was the greatest time.
But I don't even know how it went. I mean, so that's why it wasn't a hit.
I think we could come up with an approximation of it just from the title.
Let's
put the X in.
Let's put the X. He has that kind of voice, doesn't he?
Yeah, he did very much so. Well, yeah.
In sex.
I only ever saw, this is another stupid digression, the only Brits I ever went to was the one presented by Samantha Fox and Mick Fleetwood that went disastrously wrong. And it was at the Albert Hall, and Kerrang were invited because Def Leppard were on the Brits. They were playing the Brits. So they gave us a little box and we went there and
How nice that must have been for all you Kerrang!
We were very
people.
much at the side of the stage.
How come this is the first I'm hearing of this 30 years later?
We were at the side of the stage, at the Albert Hall, looking in the boxes, looked down over the stage.
No, I wouldn't know that because
the side of the stage. Samantha Fox, Samantha Fox was probably about 4'10", and Mick Fleetwood's about 7'5". So whoever came up with the idea, and neither of them could see the auto cue, so they didn't know what the hell was going on. And the star act of the reason everyone was there and the Albert Hall was filled, because this was before the Brits were sort of. I mean, now the Brits are like the British Grammys. Everyone's crazy about it. This was, you kind of knew about them, but they weren't like the biggest thing of the year.
This was the Brits.
It was just the Brits.
Otherwise known as not the Grammys.
It's like, as I say, Def Leppard were getting one. It was that sort of, But the big attraction was Bros. Bros were massive at the time.
When will I be famous?
Which was their only hit. It was a massive hit. And this was the year of that hit.
It wasn't their only hit. It's the only one anybody
as far as I'm concerned. And this was the year that it was a hit. So the Albert Hall is the floor section, which is the main section of the Albert Hall, is entirely filled with brosettes, as they were called, who were making the most tremendous racket whenever anyone came out on the stage because they thought it was going to be Bros. But obviously, like Bon Jovi at the Moscow Peace Festival, Bros weren't headlining, but they were on later than everyone else. So the Brosettes were listening to Def Leppard and whoever the hell else it was, and Samantha Fox and Mick Fleetwood, who fucked the entire show up. I mean, really, really badly. They were laughing, they were walking off, no one knew what was happening. It was chaos. That's my Samantha Fox story.
Excellent.
Good one, wasn't it?
So, back to Kiss.
Paul's gone out with Samantha Fox. Reason to Live, that was another great one. Do you remember? Everybody's got a reason to live. It's like this great AOR song that was a big hit. Everybody's got a dream and a hunger inside. And again, once again, I mean...
Did Michael Bolton write that one as well?
It probably was either Michael Bolton or Mark Mangold or one of those guys who could just write those songs.
That could have been Winger.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, those guys...
A power ballad off the Warrant album.
And when you look back through all of those, you always in the credits, it's either Michael Bolton, Holly Knight, Mark Mangold, Desmond Child... There's probably a couple of others. Always Michael Bolton.
What was the name of the one?
Michael Bolton even wrote a song for Bob Dylan. With Bob Dylan, he wrote that Michael Bolton sang. Steel Bars. Yeah.
What?
Bob
Dylan, man.
But,
you can't trust him with anybody.
He's probably getting divorced, and he thought, I need some cash. I'll write a song with Michael Bolton. It'll be a hit.
I mean, yeah. Fuck's sake. Bob had a terrible 80s, though, didn't he?
Yeah, he probably did. So, you know. But
remember that movie he did with Fiona in it?
Oh, God, yeah. Fiona.
And, what's that guy's name?
Wasn't Fiona the one that... No, I can't.
That Malcolm Dome.
That's what I was going to say, yes. And went round New York looking for her.
Yeah. Now, we're not saying he was a poor, lovesick fool.
Yeah.
But we are saying he was a fool. Nah, bless him. We've all been there.
We've all floated.
Chasing after some rock and roll floozy.
Yeah, that's
only
true,
goes
actually.
for
We all
millionaire
have, so
producers.
fair play. Yeah. Yeah, who was it? Was it Bo Hill, her boyfriend?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I can't. You can say that. I couldn't possibly comment. But and Bo and Malcolm were really good mates. Bo offered Malcolm a cracking job at Atlantic Records as an A&R guy, and Malcolm turned it down.
Probably for the best.
Well, when you look back,
he'd have signed Magnum.
Well, I think Malcolm could have been the new John Kolodner. You know,
actually, he probably he would have known who was up and coming. Exactly, he listened to more bands than anyone else on God's earth.
I sat with Bo Hill and Malcolm one afternoon in LA, late 80s, late 80s probably, and the Billboard Hot 100.
Yeah.
And at random, me and Bo were just picking something and giving Malcolm bare bones clue, and he go, "Oh yeah, that's Kiss and Reason to Love or whatever it is, you know,
Reason to Live."
He knew everything. Yeah. And you go, and what number is it this week, Malcolm? Well, last week it was number 51, so this week it's number 40.
Yeah.
We were going, fucking hell, mate. Why aren't you running the business? Why aren't you just running the music business?
Because he had that sort of mind. He just, you know,
like a steel trap.
Yeah, like steel bars. Steel bars wrapped all around me. That's how the Michael Bolton.
Diane Warren, she was the other one.
I mean, hit after hit, she's written.
I love the story of her being sent to work with Aerosmith. They'd done with this again. This is John Kolodner / Malcolm Dome. John Kolodner signs Aerosmith because they're completely finished. But he gets Joe Perry back, Steven Tyler, gets the band back, and they do a great album called Done with Mirrors, which flopperoonie, not a single hit on it. So the next album, which is Permanent Vacation, he has to have hits. And so he brings in Diane Warren, and I think she wrote Angel off that album.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But she also, Steven Tyler had this song he'd written called Party Time. No, Party Time. I forget what the fuck it was, but I'm going to say it was Party Time.
I'm just imagining Diane Warren's face as she hears the news.
Well,
Stephen's written one. Don't know if you'd like to hear.
Oh, it was something called, really, I'm going to say Party Time for argument's sake. It was Party Time, da 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 da. Party time,
so it's ragdoll, right, okay.
Dan dan dan. Party time, you know. And she just crossed out Party Time and wrote Rag Doll.
Yeah.
And for that, she got 50% of the songwriting royalties. Yeah. And apparently Tyler flipped out. But I wrote that all she did was 2 words.
Yeah.
And Colin's like, yeah, but those are the words.
They're the words, yeah.
So, Kiss have this.
But also, we should say at this point, she also wrote Don't Want to Miss a Thing, didn't she? So.
For Aerosmith, she did. Yeah. She also, if we're going to be on this subject, wrote the theme tune to, and I did love it at the time. The Star Trek, the TV series, went into several iterations.
Yeah,
So you had
we did talk about this before, and I didn't know this before, but I do know that now because you told me.
I can't remember.
It was because you were going on and on about this. Some bloke was in Star Trek, and didn't I know this is what happened? It was when you. I'm not even going to go back and listen to the Rob Halford one. It was about them recharging in pods or something.
Oh, you mean the Borg?
Yes.
No.
Anyway, but don't get sidetracked.
No.
Just talk about Diane Warren.
Okay, this is Diane Warren.
Because Diane Warren is herself a sidetrack. So
I'll bring it home if you let me. Just let me. So, way after the Next Generation, way after Voyager, which had the Borg, way after Deep Space Nine, they do a kind of reverse engineer on the Star Trek franchise, and they do a new one called Enterprise. And it goes back in time to pre-Captain Kirk, and they don't even beam up. It's that much earlier.
yeah, the technology just wasn't there.
And it's the first time ever that the theme tune is sung.
Oh, so it's not the.
And it was originally Rod Stewart singing it.
Was it? Okay.
A song written by Diane Warren that began, "It's a long time."
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In
In space.
Yeah, it's something like that. And Rod Stewart, there was a falling out over money, so he said, "No, fuck you."
Yeah.
So they brought in Russell Watson,
Oh, yeah.
who could do a very passable Rod Stewart
Yeah,
in those
yeah.
days. He had the gravel voice. So if you look up the theme tune to, I think it's Enterprise, came out in about the mid-zeros.
I'll have to do it, yeah. Because I like all that. I mean,
It's
Michael.
been a long time
the
getting
aforementioned
from there to here.
Michael Bolton, before when he was trying to write stuff for other people, was paying the bills singing jingles. So he sang Sun Kissed, which they drink it in the sun.
Really?
So, and once you know that's Michael Bolton,
Right.
you can really hear that it's him.
Right.
He sang Eminem's, several of those. Yeah.
Did I ever tell you about the time I met the guy who sang in this country the advert for Cadbury's Flake?
Oh, yeah.
Only
the crumbliest, flakiest chocolate tastes like chocolate never tasted before. Yeah. Oh, he could sing, that guy.
He was in a band from Liverpool called Saga. And
Not the Canadian saga.
Oh, maybe they weren't called Saga. Something Saga-esque. and they opened for Marillion on a tour. And every night I was on the
You
tour.
skipped to sing the
Every
Flake
night
song.
we would get him out to the piano. Yeah. Go on, sing it, go on, go on. He'd go, no, fuck off. I've done it years before.
Yeah.
We're going, no, come on. Eventually Mark Kelly would be on the piano. And he'd go, oh, and people are going, oh, I love this.
Yeah. Should put it in the set.
So, the Diane Warren years,
Yeah.
Desmond Child,
Yeah.
some hits. But you're right, they kind of became a singles band.
Yeah.
But by the time you get to the mid-90s, I mean, I think Doc became their manager in like 95.
Right.
So he's post-Bon Jovi, post-Scorpion, Skid Row, Motley. Look,
Middle of grunge, really. I mean, where do those bands go at that point?
Well, their career is over at
Yeah,
that point. They haven't done any shows in years.
Yeah.
And it is Doc that comes in and says, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to hire Soldier Field in Chicago, which holds about 100,000 people. They're going, Doc, we can't even sell a fucking theatre anymore.
Yeah.
Then, no, we're going to hire Soldier Field and we're going to do a big announcement that the 4 original guys in the original makeup are back.
Yeah.
Are back, baby.
Yeah.
And they were going, it will never work, it will never work, it will never work. It fucking worked.
Yeah.
And that was how they launched.
Because it hits that sweet spot of, if you work it out, 95. So it's 20 years on after the big. So all the guys who were sort of, 18, 19, 20 at the time, and now 40. I'm going, yeah, I'll buy a ticket
And
for that.
also, you even had Kurt Cobain saying he
Loved
loved
Kiss.
Kiss.
Yeah, that's
as
true.
a
Actually,
kid.
Kiss and
Wasn't there a
Sabbath.
picture of Kurt Cobain dressed
I
in
think
the
they were,
in the makeup?
I mean, it was Kiss and Sabbath who always kind of got name checked, didn't they? If Seattle bands were going to name check metal bands, it would be them. Yeah.
Yeah. Except for Jeff Ament in Pearl Jam, who was a Maiden fan.
Was it?
Big time.
Good man.
Calling you out.
Run
Ament.
to the... Like hear Eddie Vedder get his lips around that one. Proper song.
Yeah, he's miserable.
You look right. All I ever think of is Ross's voice. Look right. If you don't want to be in a band, if you don't want $1 million, you don't do it.
Yeah, but you don't understand.
It was when he came. I remember Ross coming rushing into the Kerrang office when it was at Carnaby Street.
Ross Halfin.
Yeah, Ross Halfin.
Legendary rock photographer.
Legendary rock. And we'd Pearl Jam were so miserable at that. And we'd finally negotiated they'd do a photo session. They hadn't done a photo session for years or whatever it was. They would never do another photo session for years, having dealt with. They would do one if it was sort of Anton Corbijn,
Right.
They're not going to do a bog standard.
Or Picasso.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. But Ross, it takes a bit of.
If Salvador
finesse.
Dali wants to come in and sculpt,
So he goes to Eddie Vedder, and at the time, do you remember Eddie Vedder would only ever wear that like a beige T-shirt, and it was all he ever wore.
Oh yeah.
But it turns out Ross comes rushing back from this session. It turns out Eddie's got like 40 of these T-shirts, and he just puts one on, so it looks like all he's got is one T-shirt, but he's just got 40 of them, which is really fun. And then Ross goes, "Oh, Edward, would you mind turning your head this way? Oh, you're such a kind man." You can imagine what it was like, So that's. But then, what a breath of fresh air! You've had years of this, and it's all terrible and all of a sudden, here's Kiss. Yeah, you want to take our photo? Yeah, sure, we'll take a photo. You want to see a proper show? Here's a proper show.
In fact,
it was probably perfectly timed.
Most definitely. I mean, Classic Rock magazine. Very first issue came out October 98, but it didn't become a fully fledged monthly magazine for over a year, beginning of 2000. And I remember, I think it was the following year, Ross came in with a brand new session he'd done with Kiss, and Kiss had brand new...
like Armour or whatever it's that Gene wears, the God of Thunder stuff.
Yeah, well, they were all in that. Outrageously brilliant pictures. And it was all about their farewell tour.
Yeah.
And we put it on the cover. Magazine did really well. I say I put it on the cover.
You took the executive decision.
I did. Those issues that didn't sell, that was when I left it to the team. Yeah, the ones that really sold, thank you. I was basically the Diane Warren of how to sell a magazine cover. And it was like I remember thinking, oh no, they're breaking up. This is not a good time to break. 10 years ago. Yeah. But you look amazing. This is fun. Fool. Of course they weren't going to break up. But it was the farewell tour. Yeah. And then I think about 2 years later there was the comeback.
What they did, what happened was Gene wrote out the farewell to Armour that I'm wearing tour. Diane Warren came in and she just crossed out to Armour. So Doc looked at it and thought,
there's $1 million for you, Diane. There you go.
Well earned. Yeah.
Yeah, call me, babe.
Yeah.
So, but I tell you what, seeing them at Wembley, not just seeing them on stage at Wembley, which always is, the icing on the cake, but because I was wandering around backstage, I got to see that side, and it's very elaborate. I remember I just come off the Francis Rossi tour.
Oh, we've spoken about this before. The secondary markets.
On the secondary market, and
Torquay.
every night.
Torquay, where Kiss weren't playing.
No, listen, I've got to tell you, every night we would do a meet and greet where Francis would sit in a chair in front of the stage, and people would be let in one at a time to be met by me, who would take their phone off them, or in many cases, old box brownie camera.
Yeah.
and they would go and sit next to Francis, and I would snap their picture on their phone or an old camera. And I remember we got quite a few complaints at the shots.
But you still got a backstage pass and stuff.
And the shots
you were still
are out
made
of
to
focus.
feel you were still made to feel special.
Oh no! I mean, they could sign something, and no, it was a good moment. But I remember the whole emphasis was, Mick will take the pictures, because that way it costs
because he knows
nothing.
Ross Southend.
Yeah,
it'll be good.
well, no, I went from doing that for 36 shows to going backstage to Kiss, where they had a similar setup.
Yeah,
Except they were all. It takes them at least 2 hours to get that together.
yeah.
And then they would have hundreds of people ready.
Yeah,
they had a whole stage set up backstage. And people would come in and they'd get up on the little stage with the guys from Kiss, who were all amazing.
Yeah.
And they'd have lights behind them, professional photographer.
Yeah.
And by the time they'd gone round the circuit, their photos, there you go.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, this is a step on from what I was doing.
With Francis.
Yeah, yeah. And they were so they were like, ready guys, right, okay, 1, 2, 3, yeah! With Francis, I'm going, Francis, look at the camera.
Try
Francis,
not to look like you want to.
Francis,
Yeah.
you're looking bored again. But, so yeah, they were operating on a different level. And then on the Kiss cruise last November, I saw them play, I think, at least 3 times.
Yeah.
And it was different every time. And I suddenly realised, my God, how many amazing songs they've got that I'd forgotten.
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious ones, but then something like Christine 16.
Yeah, all those.
It's
Again,
fantastic when you see them doing that.
yeah.
Christine 16.
Yeah.
I mean, you
And
wouldn't
do they
really
have
write a song like that anymore, would you?
Forgive my ignorance, but who is in Kiss these days? Apart, I know Gene and Paul are, but who was on the cruise? Bruce Kulick was on the cruise.
As a guest.
I mean, you were there. You saw the band. You saw them 3 times. I mean,
absolutely.
For argument, was Ace Frehley there?
No.
So Ace is out because this was the thing. I think
it was the band that is together today.
See, I think Simmons has kind of gone through the. I think he went through a kind of slightly horrible period that was around the 98, 2000s, whatever. When he did that book that I was talking about, and for some reason I ended up. I mean, it was Classic Rock or someone. I ended up doing 2 or 3 phoners with him that were probably 2 or 3 years apart. I can't remember the ins and outs of them, all for different things. And every time I remember putting the phone down, thinking how remarkably unpleasant he was.
Really?
Not rude. I don't mean rude, unpleasant. And Gene is always there to promote his thing, so but his attitude to life was unpleasant. It was all about money. It was, I remember him being scathing about Ace Frehley because Ace was a drunk and couldn't get it together. I've given him this opportunity to make this money and he's just blown it. And I don't know. It didn't sit well with me. He didn't seem happy, and I don't know why I would expect him. I'm not expecting him to be jolly happy, but he almost seemed like he was resenting the world. The world hadn't somehow recognised Gene Simmons' genius. In actual fact, he from where he's come from, man, he's lived a life. I mean, you think about that kid who couldn't speak English.
Doc told me that I can't remember the exact circumstances, but when I was there last year hanging out, an offer had come through from Gordon Ramsay in one of his kitchen nightmare type shows. He was doing like a celebrity version. And I think Paul Stanley had just opened a restaurant in LA
it was in Vegas, wasn't it?
Vegas,
I'm sure it was. I remember that.
So I don't think anything happened in the end. But there was an approach about can we...
Yeah.
And Doc said, Gene said to him, because Gene was not entirely thrilled that this Gordon Ramsay thing would happen with Paul and not him.
Yeah.
And Doc was kind of saying, I don't think we're even going to do it, Gene. I mean, it's Gordon Ramsay. It's going to be him fucking yelling at Paul, isn't it? Yeah, that's a Gordon Ramsay show for some. Your restaurant's shit. Here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
So he's explaining this to Gene, and Gene goes, How come all these shitty reality TV show people come to us? They don't go to Mick Jagger or Bob Dylan, do they?" And Doc goes, "Well, see, Gene, if you'd ever bothered to write some fucking songs like they did, maybe they wouldn't be coming to you either.
Yeah.
But you didn't do that. You went the other way.
Yeah.
You went into the big
Gene had his
spectacle.
own show, which was another thing I interviewed him. It was like a sort of at home with Gene Simmons and his wife. And his wife was lovely. This was another thing that got his wife was lovely, really lovely. But every time you interviewed him, he'd insist on going on and on about how many women, to the 2,000 groupies, because he thought that's what you wanted to hear.
Yeah, yeah. He has it's kind of like he opens the box outrage. Sex and, well, he doesn't do drugs, but
Yeah, it's the
rock
other
and
thing you
roll
see,
stories.
the other thing about Gene, he's completely straight, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but he's not a kind of drinking, drugging, rock star type. He's just not.
To me, I think it's like where Keith Richards is clearly that drinking, drugging, rock and roll guy. Gene, it's money.
Yeah.
It's money and sex.
It is, yeah.
Adam Ant, when he used to sing "Don't drink, don't smoke," what do you do? Well, people that don't drink or smoke or take drugs, generally they fuck a lot.
Yeah.
And they got all the time in the world to make money because they never spend it on anything. But there was a Classic Rock Awards a few years ago where Gene Simmons was the guest, or not guest speaker, I don't know what the fuck.
Presenter.
He was up there.
Presenting an award or something.
And he gave a speech where the tears were falling down my face. Tears were falling. They were falling down my face. He was absolutely hilarious. And of course, it included a rant about how much money they were making. And he was saying, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I'm paraphrasing in the broadest possible sense. He was like, we now have 52 Kiss-branded golf courses all over America. You can be buried in a Kiss coffin.
Yeah.
And we have this and we have that. And he went on, and it reached fever pitch where you just are like, please stop. He was so funny. And then I was lucky enough to spend a bit of time with Doc last year at his place in Nashville.
Yeah.
And as chance would have it, the room I stayed in, there was an adjoining door that led into a sort of a little corridor area, and then down there was another door. And in that door was where Doc kept hundreds of Kiss merchandise items. And he said, help yourself. and John,
but don't tell G.
It was like being in Hamley's toy shop on Christmas Eve, except it's all Kiss all the time.
Yeah.
In the end, I didn't take anything because you didn't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm getting back to the airport the next day. I was like, I'm going to be carrying a giant Gene Simmons doll. You know? Although I would have if it hadn't been for that. So anyway,
but you got to watch it with Doc asking you to take stuff through airports.
Shut up, Coco. And then on the Kiss cruise, I think the first night we had dinner, and it was a big table, maybe 15 people Doc is hosting, and I'm on one of these people. And after he says, right, let's go up to the top deck. And I don't know what's going on, but it's like midnight, and we go up into this room, which hasn't been open to the public yet. Massive room, John. And it's all the merch that they're going to sell on the tour, on the cruise.
Yeah.
And he's like, help yourself. And this time I did because it was T-shirts, hoodies.
Set your own stall up down on deck 5.
No, I literally just got one item each for all the family.
Yeah.
Which they all
loved. Yeah,
and
yeah.
still wear.
Yeah.
Linda's got a Kiss hoodie that she wears to work. She loves it.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's where we are at with Kiss is, and I think the same with whether it's the Stones or Guns N' Roses. When Guns N' Roses played in London a couple of years ago, there were all these pictures online of these really young people wearing all their Guns N'
Yeah,
Roses
yeah, yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
going off to see Guns N' Roses.
It was like when Topshop started selling Iron Maiden T-shirts. It's edged into the wider culture.
It completely has. I mean, one of my daughters has that Rolling Stones, the
The tongue, yeah.
And I said, "Oh, you got a Stones shirt?" She went, "What?"
Yeah.
She had no idea what I was talking about. She just loved the design. And I think this is where Kiss are at. So no one really buys records anymore.
No, and Kiss up, they're not sort of their vanity sort of doesn't extend to thinking that's what people want. In the same way, like the Stones sort of think, well, what you really want to hear is Mick Jagger's blues album. That's absolutely what we really don't want to hear. You know,
we want Keith
surprising
with a syringe in his eyeball, singing about the devil.
Yeah,
that's what we want.
That's it. That's what you want.
Well, I think
but Kiss know what you want is the experience.
And I tell you what, it was an experience.
Yeah.
Like one, I think at least one day, maybe 2 days, in one of the theatres on the ship, Paul was giving a masterclass in art.
Oh, he paints, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he came out with the beret, the paintbrushes, the smock.
Of course he did.
The easel.
Of course he did.
It was fantastic, man. It was fantastic.
It's like that show that's on, the Bob guy who does the painting on TV.
I'm laughing. I don't know what you're talking.
Yeah, you do. Ask Paul.
And then another day they had the final night. Whatever was planned, I can't remember what was planned, but there was a terrible storm. So all the shows that have been scheduled for the up deck where the pool was, that was where the big shows would happen late at night, they all had to be cancelled. So they quickly reverted to Paul doing something in this theatre.
Right.
And this is like from about 11 p.m. till 1 a.m. or whatever. And they show cartoons, these truly hilarious from the original 30s and 40s cartoons of Tom and Jerry and things like that, where it's really bloody and vicious and hilarious. They do about an hour of that, and then Paul comes out looking like Scrooge on Christmas Eve, except the opposite in terms of personality. He's got like a night dress on. You know those floppy hats, the bed hat?
Yeah.
He's got one of those. And he's come out to read us a story, a bedtime story. And he has all these children. They've got all these cushions on the stage, and all the children have to sit on the stage listening, plus us in the audience.
Yeah.
And he's got this book, some graphic novel that someone's produced about Kiss. And he's telling the story of Kiss. It's very, very funny. And then at the end, he says, "Who's got any questions?" And one of these little kids sticks their arm up. And he's like, "You, Jimmy, what is it you want to know?" And he goes, "How much money do you make?"
Brilliant. You see, now Gene would have loved that question. Because Gene would have
Paul
told
should have
him.
said, "Gene, is that you?"
Yeah. Gene would have told him.
Gene would have explained on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, they were selling replica guitars and things.
Yeah.
And what I heard, I can't vouch for the accuracy, but what I was told was in the first 24 hours on the cruise, I think Gene had sold over $1 million worth of replica bass guitar.
See, the thing is that I'm sure this story's...
So who needs to make an album?
Yeah, exactly. Sure, the story's slightly apocryphal. When those rock and roll cruises started... And again, Kiss weren't the first to do it, you know.
Not the first, but the best.
But the best. And it does sound like theirs is now the best. But they did an early one, and I'm not even sure if it was a Kiss cruise. It's just they were just on it. I remember someone saying to me, and I can't remember who it was, how much Gene had hated it. And the reason he hated it was because you can't get away from people. There's nowhere you can go. They're just there the whole time. It was like his nightmare, being surrounded by Kiss fans 24/7.
They fixed that problem.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
So on this ship, there were 12 decks, but you couldn't go beyond deck number 9.
Yeah.
Because after that, you had to have a special key for the elevator, or you went up the stairs and knocked on a Oh no, I actually did have a thing that would get me in. Yeah. But I very rarely went up there because as soon as you got in there, as soon as you came out the private elevator doors, or you came through the door at the top of the stairs, were armed guards.
Right, yeah.
And it didn't matter that you had all the right passes. You still had to tell them who you were there to see.
Yeah.
Right, you wait there while I go and get them. If you spent enough time up there, they got used to you, which I did eventually. But this is a completely different world to the one. They had their own pool.
Yeah.
Had their own chef.
Yeah.
Their own everything. Gene's cabin. Was it Gene or Paul? Might have been Paul actually. His cabin had a white grand Steinway piano in it.
Yeah, that'd have been Paul. Gotta be Paul.
Butlers.
Yeah.
And everything else you can think of, all going on right there. And it was. So they definitely got away whenever they needed to.
Yeah.
But they were surprisingly available, particularly Paul and the rest of them. And the Unplugged show they did literally around the swimming pool as we set sail. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Because they were just laughing and joking. And then they started hazing each other on stage, sort of joking, but, And Gene Simmons kept moaning that he couldn't hear his bass. And Doc's at the desk. And at one point, Gene said something
why
like...
I couldn't hear the bass.
Yeah,
Doc's just turned
Doc's
it off.
going, we don't want that. Yeah. And Gene's going, hey, Doc, you going to turn up that bass, or are we looking for a new manager in the morning?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ha ha.
Yeah.
Only joking.
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, if ever there was a rock and roll marriage made in heaven, it is Doc and Kiss.
It is. Well, it's good to know Doc's still making money on the high seas.
He's just fine-tuned.
One way or another.
He has fine-tuned. I tell you what, we'll have to do one on Doc one day. When his book
he's
comes
tremendous.
out.
Yeah.
Because he is
a character and a half.
He is so smart and so funny.
Yeah.
So funny. But anyway, so Kiss today, if you are tuning in as live and it's New Year's Eve, Dubai live stream. They've spent $750,000 making it COVID secure.
Yeah.
And interestingly, they've spent $1 million merely on the pyro.
Yeah. And it's going to look amazing.
It's going to be fucking amazing.
Yeah. Of course it is.
Yeah.
It's Kiss, baby.
It's going to be crazy. Come on, I know you want to join. Crazy.
Just drop your admission fee at the door there. And then you'll hear all the songs.
Yeah, you had the rest.
All the one. Yeah.
Now
here's the best.
He's the best.
He's the richest.
And the best.
If you liked this episode, be sure to leave us a review, share it with a friend, or plain old subscribe wherever you happen to listen to it. For full episode show notes, visit nofilter.media/Getcha Rocks Off.
This has been a No Filter Media production.
Say what you want.